Good evening to you all. I welcome you all for this webinar. We are going to talk about energy efficiency and energy audit in this webinar. So I'd like to introduce myself before getting into this webinar. I am Joel Franklin Asria, Deputy Director with Dr. Ambedkar Institute of Productivity, National Productivity Council, Chennai. Basically, I am a chemical engineer with the Master of Energy Engineering from Anna University, presently pursuing PhD in Renewable Energy System from NIT Trichy. So I am having more than 20 years of experience, consultancy and training in the areas of energy, environment and renewable energy. So with me, I would like to introduce another panel member, Ms. Chitra. She is the Deputy Director joining from AIP Chennai. Chitra, can you say hi?
Presentation, webinar presentation on energy efficiency and energy audit. Thank you.
Okay. So let us move into this webinar. So in this webinar, I will cover only important aspects and give you an overview of all factors so that you can understand better about energy efficiency and their interlinkages with energy audit. So here, energy sources. So we basically classify energy sources into conventional and non-conventional type. Otherwise renewable and non-renewable energy sources. Under conventional fuels, we have fossil fuels and nuclear fuels, and non-conventional, that is renewable energy sources, we have solar, wind and biomass, geothermal energy, wave to energy, tide energy, ocean thermal energy conversion. So all these comes under renewable energy sources. So if you look globally also, so world relies mostly on only fossil fuels, that is coal, oil and natural gas. So about 70% of energy comes from fossil fuels. In India also, we are the world's third largest producer and consumer of electricity. So we have only 8 to 9% of world total reserve in terms of coal, and less than 1% of world total reserve in terms of oil and gas, with about 16% of world's population. So day by day, these fossil fuels are depleting, and we face fuel problem because of this inexhaustible nature of these fossil fuels. If you see our installed power capacity, it is around 3,70,000 megawatt. That is our electricity installed capacity. So out of 3,70,000 megawatt, so we get more than 62% from fossil fuel based power plants, and also 23% from renewable energy sources, 12% from hydropower, and less than 2%, that is 1.8% from nuclear energy. So this is our Indian scenario. And with respect to renewable energy sources, so the installed capacity is 86,000, and out of 86,000, solar and wind are dominant sources, contributing around 38,000 megawatt from wind and 35,000 megawatt from solar, and bioenergy 9,000 megawatt. We have hydropower also, that is only 4,000 megawatt, and other waste energy just 150 megawatt. So this is about the renewable energy scenario in India. So usage of these fossil fuels for our energy requirements and also for other process and developmental activities, they not only meet our energy requirements through heat, but also it damages the environment. So currently we face so many global environmental issues like global warming and climate change, acid rain, ozone layer depletion, loss of biodiversity. So the first issue, which is global warming and climate change, is because of uh, emissions, greenhouse emissions that are coming from fossil fuels, depending on the fuel composition. So we get carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, sulfur oxides, nitrogen oxide gases while burning these fossil fuels for our energy requirements and process requirements. So these gases, particularly carbon dioxide, which is the main contributor of your climate change and global warming. In addition to that, we also have other greenhouse gases, water vapor, nitrous oxide, and chlorofluorocarbons. But CO2 is the main contributor. Uh, in terms of world CO2 contribution, so we are in the sixth position. So India is in the sixth position uh, in the world CO2 contribution. China is in number one, and the US and European Union, and we are in the fourth position in terms of CO2 emission globally. So due to this global warming and climate change, there are many direct and indirect impacts we are facing now. So direct impacts, melting of glaciers, and indirect, so it will affect our agricultural activity, and there may be flooding, rise in seawater level, all those things because of global climate change. So acid rain, again due to sulfur oxide and nitrogen oxides, again because of burning of fossil fuels. So these gases combine with water vapor in the air and fall as acid rain on the surface of the earth. It will mix up with water bodies, and this when you consume, it will directly affect human health as well as it will affect aquatic life. So this acid rain is very corrosive because of negative pH. So this negative pH rain is very corrosive. It will damage all metal components. So the railway and aeroplane industry, they face problems with this acid rain because it will eat away all their metal components, bridges, and also it will damage stonework. So recent, a few years before, we faced a problem of fading away of shining of Taj Mahal because of nearby boundary sectors, because of this SOx and NOx problems only. So next one is ozone layer depletion. This is also due to chlorofluorocarbons, which we were using for refrigeration industries. Now it got banned, but still the layer is there. So the chlorine damages the ozone layer. This ozone layer is present in the stratosphere. We have different layers from the earth: troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, and so on. So it is exactly in the stratosphere. It is 20 to 50-kilometer range. So we face this problem in Antarctic region. This ozone layer depletion. So as of now, only it got required only few percentage. So it will take another 50 years. By 2070, so this we will get back this ozone layer again. So the ozone hole, through ozone hole we get unwanted UV radiations that will affect our is loss of biodiversity. So because of rise in temperature, so the global average temperature is around 15 degrees centigrade. So now it has risen about 0.8 degree from 15 degree. So as of now, so all world over they are trying to keep this temperature rise within 2 degrees centigrade by 2100. So that is our objective. Otherwise, if it reaches 3 4 degree, so that will be the end of our life on Earth. So that is a problem, because right now also we are facing problem with rising temperature, global average temperature. Because of rising temperature, we are losing about 50,000 special every year.
Okay.
So that is the condition.
Sir, kindly change this slide. They are asking to change.
Yeah, yeah. No, we don't look at the slide. Yeah, yeah. So because of this fossil fuel consumption, currently we face two problems. That is mainly your depletion of fossil fuels and also increasing demand. So another problem is environmental damage. To address these two main issues, there are only two solutions with us. Because one is either we have to reduce our energy consumption through energy efficiency measures and conducting of energy audit, or we need to switch over to alternative energy fuels like renewable energy source. So here we focus on uh, uh, reduction of energy, how it is done through energy auditing. So the another solution is renewable energy. Maybe we will discuss this renewable energy topic in the next webinar. So sustainable development, the energy is the key for any developmental activity. So countries which use energy efficiently will succeed economically. So that is the condition. So whatever we use, it should be in optimized manner so that we can save something for our future generation. So if you look at the definition here, sustainable development is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the viability of future generations to meet their own needs. So all our use should be in optimized manner so that we leave something for our future generation. Because the depletion of fossil fuels within it will be there only for next 140 years in for coal, and oil and natural gas we will be having for next 40 and 50 years. So this is the current scenario. So we need to uh, uh, practice sustainable development. So energy efficiency and energy audit are very, very important for sustainable development. So let us understand the energy efficiency and energy conservation. Though both appear same and related, but they have distinct definitions. So energy efficiency is nothing but using less energy for the same output or same service. Energy conservation is it's linked with behavior change. That is reducing or going without the service to save energy. So here you can see an example. TV. So TV number of hours used here. So instead of watching for 8 hours, so if I watch the TV for 4 hours, so 4 hours I am going without that service. So it is energy conservation practice. I am practicing energy conservation. Here I am not reducing the number of usage of TV, but I am using energy efficient TV. So I am watching 8 hours, but with energy efficient TV. So here I am reducing, I am practicing the energy efficiency. So another better example would be, so when you leave a room, you turn off all your lights. So it is a energy conservation practice. You are avoiding that service. You are reducing that service. If you replace all your inefficient incandescent bulb with energy efficient LED lightings, that is energy efficiency practice. So both energy conservation and energy efficiency lead to monetary and energy savings. So these are the benefits of practicing energy efficiency: reduced waste, it will reduce energy cost, improved quality, increased productivity and profits, increased competitiveness, minimal damage to the environment. It will ensure energy security. So finally, it will lead to sustainable development. So the basic definition of energy efficiency is useful energy output from total energy input. Here you can see a list of various energy conversion devices which we use. So electric heater, the conversion is from electricity to thermal, electrical energy to thermal energy, and the efficiency is 100%. Hair dryer, again 100%. Electric generator, mechanical energy to electricity, 95% efficiency. So large electric motors, 90%. Battery, chemical energy to electricity, 90%. and steam turbine, thermal to mechanical 45%, automobile engine 25%, fluorescent lamp electricity to light energy 20%, so incandescent bulb very low efficiency electrical energy to light energy 5%. So here let us understand overall efficiency. So in a system, uh, it includes so many energy conversion devices. For example, here you can see a boiler, which is an energy conversion device, and we have turbine, generator. So in a power plant, so these energy conversion devices are used. So each will have a different efficiency. So boiler is having efficiency about 88%, and turbine is having efficiency of 40%. Generator is 98%. So how do you arrive at overall efficiency? So in boiler, chemical energy is converted into thermal energy, steam. So the steam goes to the turbine. Here, the thermal energy is converted into mechanical energy. Again, the mechanical energy is converted into electrical energy. So overall efficiency of boiler multiplied by efficiency of turbine multiplied by efficiency of generator. 0.88 into zero point 0.4 into 0.98, you will get 0.35. Okay? So the overall efficiency of the thermal power plant is just 35%. So where the remaining will go? 65%. So the 65% will be the waste heat from thermal power plant. So the heat will go either to the through cooling tower, it will go to the water body as thermal pollution, or it will be through stack. So next one is lighting system. Here also the overall efficiency we will see. So starting from power plant, 35% efficiency, transmission lines 90% efficiency. So we are using incandescent bulb at home. So efficiency is just 5%. So the overall efficiency from chemical energy, from fuel till the light energy, what we get at the end. If you multiply all efficiency, you will get only 1.6% efficiency. So energy audit. So energy audit is the tool and the systematic approach to achieve energy efficiency. So through energy audit only, we can identify different energy waste streams and we can quantify. So if you see the definition as per the Energy Conservation Act 2001, it is analysis of use of energy efficiency in factory or any industry, and it should also include a report which should have all your energy efficiency options along with cost benefit analysis. So there will not be any manufacturing process without a loss. All manufacturing processes will have a loss. So this energy audit will help us to identify various losses that are resulting from an industry, and also it will investigate all phases of facility, historical and current use to identify and quantify energy waste. So and also it will help us to arrive at a benchmark. What is the energy consumption per unit of my product? Specific energy consumption. I am consuming 200 units per ton of a product. So this kind of reference benchmark will get only if you conduct energy audit. So in any industry, there are three main operating expenses. One is energy, the second one is labor and materials. So energy is the top ranker of all cost reduction. So through energy audit, we try to reduce this energy cost, and this will also help us for managing energy in the organization. So energy audit is classified into three main categories. One is preliminary energy audit, targeted energy audit, detailed energy audit. So in preliminary energy audit, it is nothing but a walkthrough audit. So energy auditor just while making a walkthrough in any industry, So you will observe some of the easily, readily available energy options, which are otherwise called low-hanging fruits. So if we walk through any industry, you will observe some leakages, like steam leakage, compressed air leakage. There may be unnecessary lighting, and there will be a problem with insulation. So all those things that doesn't require detailed analysis. Just if you walk through, an energy auditor will, with his experience, he will identify these simple measures. So these simple measures are immediately readily implementable options. So this is about preliminary energy audit. Targeted energy audit, again, it is according to the requirement of the client. So the client may require us to focus only on a particular energy intensive equipment. For example, refrigeration system or boiler or my fan system or compressor system. So we'll focus only on the targeted object, that is targeted energy intensity equipment in targeted energy audit. Detailed energy audit, we will thoroughly investigate all energy intensity equipments that are used by the industry. So the preliminary energy audit will take only just 1 or 2 days walkthrough audit. For target audit, of course, it will take 1 week time. Detailed audits, detailed energy audit will take 1 or 2 months. So there are different stages while doing detailed energy audit. Initiating the audit, preparing the audit, executing the audit, reporting the audit, implementing the audit. So it is done in 11 steps. So in the first step, we try to get information from the client, historical and current data, all information from the client. Step 2, we have to plan how much time is required, what type of resources we require, and audit team we need to propose, then what are the instruments required. So all those things we prepare in the step 2. Step 3, so we'll conduct open meeting with the client, and we will explain about the audit process. So step 4, again we go for field to gather more information and try to understand their process activities, operating practices, and their energy reporting system, monitoring system, and we will develop energy utility diagram. So step 5, we gather additional information with the help of questionnaire. So with this, we will try to compare the design data with the actual measurements. In step 6, we will conduct on site trials in all energy intensive equipments. We conduct performance trials and evaluate its performance, and cross check with the design whether it is delivering the design values or the design as degraded. So step 7. So after conducting performance trials, after getting data from the client, we will analyze the data and do energy and material balance, and try to evolve energy conservation options with the help of brainstorming session with vendors and the client. So step 8, we'll list out the energy conservation measures and their cost benefit analysis in step 9. So step 10, we close the audit by making a brief presentation about the key findings to the client in the field itself. And after coming back from the field, we will do the detailed evaluation of all options, and we will calculate their technical and economical viability of each option, and we will present it in the report. That is our final report. Step 11 is out of the purview of the energy audit. So it is action plan for implementation of the suggested energy conservation measures. So implementation, they will get it done through either energy conservation companies called ESCO. For that also, we will help them to prepare detailed project report also, NPC. So these are the instruments we use for our energy audit. For analyzer, this is for measuring oxygen and CO2 levels, Again, we have pitot tube to measure pressure drop. We have speed measuring instruments, stroboscope. Then we have thermometers, then hygrometers, flow meters, infrared meters. So using these instruments, we conduct performance trials in the field. So this is the audit report format. So it should start with acknowledgement and the executive summary. The executive summary should present all your energy saving options with cost benefit analysis. Then we have introduction about the plant. Then production process description, energy and utility system description. Then in chapter 4, we will present a detailed process flow diagram, energy and material balance. Then in chapter 5, we present all our measurement done on all energy intensive equipments, performance assessment trials. So finally, in the chapter 6, we will present all energy conservation measures and recommendations. In annexures, we include worksheets and list of instruments and vendors list where they can get the required energy efficient technology. So for implementing the energy efficiency measure, so even ISO 50001 is also a tool. This will aid for implementation process. So ESCOs also will help, and we NPC also help in preparing detailed project report for quick decision making. So now we have understood about the audit methodology. Now we will move on to how to do energy auditing of electrical equipments. So as far as electrical system is concerned, so the scope for energy saving is very less. If you look at the pure electrical system, so it will have only electrical distribution system, then transformers, motors, and our focus should be more on driven systems. It is mechanical system, fans and blowers, exhaust ventilation system, pumps and pumping system, compressed air system, air conditioning system, cooling tower system. So all these mechanical systems are connected to motors. So if you focus on this mechanical system, automatically, so it will lead to energy savings in electrical system. So this is a typical industrial electrical system. So it starts from the feeder EB supply line. So here you have a trivector meter followed by transformer, step down transformer. So then they will be having DG set in case of power failure. So it starts from metering here. So transformers are highly efficient electrical devices. So already the efficiency will be in the range of 95 to 98.5%. Then comes your distribution line. Distribution loss is also very less in the electrical systems. Then finally it is connected to the loads, fans and blowers, pumps, all your loads, lighting and all. So if you look at savings in pure electrical system, the savings will be very minimal. So you should focus more on driven systems. The maximum demand controller, so it is an excellent tool for load management. So what it does is, so it will keep on tracking your maximum demand. So it will compare with preset demand value. Once your maximum demand reaches the preset value, automatically it will shut off all unnecessary loads. So thereby it will reduce your loads, and if there is no maximum demand controller, definitely you will face KVA demand charges. The maximum demand charges you will face because of not using this maximum demand controller. So next one is power factor improvement. So advantages of power factor correction. So you will avoid unnecessary penalties from the EB, that is utility, when you maintain the power factor in the range of 0.8, 0.99. So we will get even incentives also from the utility board. So also this will reduce your KVR demand, and it will reduce your KVA demand, and it will reduce your line current. So these are all the advantages of PF improvement. So if you reduce your KVA demand, definitely your transformer rating will also reduce. So thereby your cost will reduce. Your reduction in line loss is also energy saving measure. Then here reduction in KVA demand. So if you look at energy bill of industry, it will have two parts. One is demand charges and another one is consumption charges. Consumption charges depending on the number of units, kWh. Demand charges depending on this KVA value. So if you maintain very good power factor, so this KVA reduction will take place. Thereby you will get a reduction in your demand charges. So and also reduction in switchgear rating, reduction in cable size. All those benefits will get once you improve your power factor of your electric system. How do you improve this power factor? So it will be by choosing a right capacitor. So you can go for PF improvement. As I already told you, these transformers are highly efficient electrical devices. So the efficiency is already in the range of 95 to 98.5%. Still, we can have some of the simple measures. So here to further improve its efficiency, so we should try to match the load with transformer. The next one is we have to distribute the load so equally to the transformers. So there may be underloaded and overloaded transformers. If your load to the transformer is less than 50%, definitely there will be a power loss. So all your transformers should be loaded beyond 50%. So you try to maintain above 60% of loading to your transformers. So if you use two transformers, so you can equally distribute the loads, 60% loads to the two transformers. The next measure is you disconnect the transformers when not in use. Then another option is if your transformer is very old and say 35 years already passed, then you can try this new efficient transformers. So new efficient transformers will have amorphous core, so it will reduce your no load loss. 80% of no load loss will be reduced if you use amorphous core transformers. It will have efficiency more than 99.75% efficiency. So you can go for, if your transformers are very old, you can, if you go for new transformers, you can choose amorphous core based transformers. So you try to locate all your transformers very near to the load. Why? Because if it is away from the load, unnecessary distribution loss through cable. So that's why recommendation is you try to locate your transformer very near to the major loads. So next one is motors. So 70% of equipment industries used in industry are powered by electric motors. So here operating cost is more than 100 times of purchase cost. So that is why while choosing a motor, you should always look into its operation cost. So simply if you go for a cheaper one, so if you look at the operating cost, it is 100 times than the purchase cost. So you should be very careful in selecting a motor. So don't go for low efficient and cheaper motors. So all your motors should be operated at minimum load of more than 50%. Because if you look at this curve here, loading versus efficiency curve. So here, so only at 50% loading of motor, the efficiency will get 75%. If you operate your motor at 25% loading, your efficiency will decrease to 50%. So while doing motor survey as an energy auditor, so we will focus on motors which is rating more than 10 HP. So small motors usually we'll focus uh, for better energy savings. We'll focus only on motors with 10 HP and above. So there will be more than 100 200 motors in an industry. So with the help of power analyzer, we conduct trials. We check the loading. So we measure the actual power parameters and compare with less than 50%. Then we'll recommend the industry to go for improve the loading to the motor. So even with 75% loading, if the efficiency is less, then we will suggest them you go for a better energy efficient motor or some other energy conservation options like uh, delta to star mode. So it is an inexpensive and effective way of energy reduction if your motor loading is less than 40%. If your motor loading is less than 40%, so you can change your connections from the regular data to star mode. So in star mode, what happens is the voltage will reduce by root 3%, reduce by root 3. So thereby the motor will get derated. So for example, if the motor rating is 50 kilowatt, if you operate the 50 kilowatt motor in star mode, so definitely the rating will reduce by one third. So it will become 5 kilowatt motor. So if it becomes 5 kilowatt, definitely the loading will be better. If loading is improved, automatically as per this graph, if loading is improved from 40% to 75%, automatically delta to star mode operation. So another is if you expect more load variations, then we can try variable speed drives also. This is a case example of inefficient motors with 91 uh, percent efficiency, that is IE1 motor. So there is a classification of motors according to their efficiency, starts from IE1, IE2, IE3, IE4, recently IE5 is also there. So IE1 is the lowest efficient and IE2 better than IE1 and IE3 little more efficiency. So depending on the efficiency, they are classified into 5 types. So here the old motor is having only 91% efficiency. It's a 37 kilowatt motor. So if you uh, replace this with the latest IE3 motor, same capacity with more efficiency, around 94% efficiency. So it will end in direct energy savings. See, from 91% to 94%. So this is the formula. So here you can see 2.88% of energy saving if you implement this measure. So annual energy saving around 4,206 units per year. So earlier using old motor, your energy consumption is 1,46,052 units in a year. So the operating days is 360 days, 10 hours per day. So now with this improved efficient motor, so 4,200 units will be reduction in your annual energy consumption. So 4,200 units. So you will get benefit if you replace the old inefficient motor with latest energy efficient motor. Again, you have to work out cost economics also. So simply you cannot switch over to IE1 to IE3 or IE4. You have to work out cost economics. How many hours of operation are you going to use? So what will be my capacity of the motor and all those parameters we have to calculate before going into the option. So next one is lighting. So lighting also we can go for energy efficient lighting. So basically we have four types of lights: old incandescent, then we have fluorescent tube light, we have gas discharge lamps, and the latest one is light emitting the LED lamps. So here you first option will be you try to use daylight with the help of skylight and transparent sheets. You try to use freely available sunlight to enter into your workplace. So that will be the best option. Then second option is you can go for energy efficient lights. So you can try T5 LED induction lamps. So according to your illumination requirements, lumen levels, according to your task, you can choose your lightings, energy efficient lightings. Then other control techniques, timer based. So for all your street lightings, we can around your campus or industry, you just fix a timer. So evening 6 o'clock it should be on, morning 6 a.m. it should be off. So this timer also will save some energy. So voltage control also will save energy. Occupancy sensors. So when you leave the room, automatically it will shut off. All your lights will get turned off. So it will have some photo sensor. So it will measure the temperature of human body, and it will gives a signal. Once you leave, automatically it will turn off all lights in your room or in your factory or street inside any lighting area. So this is how we can try all these options and lighting system. So this is another energy conservation measure we recommended in one of our energy audits conducted in a government office building in Gujarat in 2000 around 2010. So they were using T12 lamps, 40 numbers of fluorescent tube lights, and rating is including ballast, it is 52 watts. So each fluorescent tube light is 52 watts capacity, 40 numbers were used. And if you see the total wattage, it comes around 2.1 kilowatt. So this is the connected load, lighting load, 2.1 kilowatt. So number of hours operation, it's 12 hours per day is on. Then total energy consumed per day because of these lights, inefficient lights, is 25 units per day. This is their energy consumption for lighting. So if you calculate annual energy consumption, it is they get around 9,125 units in an annum. So this is the existing lighting energy consumption in the building. So we propose to replace all these 40 numbers of 52 watts old fluorescent tube lights with latest 18 watts LED bulbs, LED lamps. So the energy consumption by the LED lamps just 0.72 kilowatt. So this is the total 40 numbers of 18 watts bulb, just 0.70 kilowatt. But in earlier case, it is 2.1 kilowatt. Same 12 hours of operation. So here per day consumption is only 9 units. So there it is 25 units. Now the number of units has come down to only 9 units. So annual energy consumption from 9,125 it has come down to 3,225. So total energy reduction per annum 5,000. 9,000 minus 3,000, we get 5,000. So this is your total energy savings. If you convert it into monetary terms, rupees 5 per unit, around 30,000 per annum. So we are able to save by implementing this simple measure, that is replacing all inefficient lighting with efficient LED lights. So new Urja scheme, government scheme also, they are looking into this replacement of old incandescent bulb with LED lamps. So they supply 7 watts in the building. Now they supply 9 watts LED lights to all households. So they started with Puducherry. So we have been asked to conduct the survey about the effectiveness of implementation of this scheme. Then there were about more than 8 lakhs incandescent bulbs replaced with these LED lamps, and it resulted in considerable reduction of electricity. So this is one of the best demand side management technique. Even in India, they started to pushing this technique to efficiency measure to all states. So now in Tamil Nadu also it is going on. They are replacing these old inefficient lamps with 9 watts LED lamps. So payback, again payback. This was conducted earlier. So the lamp price is 2,500 per lamp. We have taken. Now it has reduced. It may be just 500 rupees, I think. Now the 18 watts LED lamp. So accordingly, the payback period will still go down. Instead of 3.4 years, within 6 months, will get back your money if you go for replacement of your old lamp with efficient lighting. Your next option is uh, combining DG set cooling tower with the main cooling tower. So in this case, there is a separate cooling tower which was operating for DG set, and also there was a main cooling tower. So what we suggested is, so this main cooling tower is just 30% loaded. So if you look into this table, so the capacity was 5,000 metric cube per hour. The present it is operated with just 3,000 metric cube per hour, and here you can see the loading only 30% loaded. So the main cooling tower is just only 30% loaded. So our DG set cooling tower, the capacity is just 240 metric cube per hour. For 240 metric cube per hour, they were using separate cooling tower. So we recommended them to add this 240 metric cube into this main cooling tower, because it is just only 30% loaded. So thereby they could stop 2 fans and 2 pumps that were attached to the cooling tower. So by implementing this option, so the net energy saving is just 40 kilowatt, because we have totally stopped the uh, DG set cooling tower. So we combined this flow load into the main cooling tower. So 40 kilowatt into 8,400 hours. So 3,36,000 units savings. So in terms of money, 13.4 lakhs per year. So investment, if you see, you will be surprised. It's no investment. We have totally removed the DG set cooling tower, and also only piping cost. So we have to connect this new 240 metric cube load to the main cooling tower. So the investment is less than 1.5 lakhs. So another case study that was done with fans. So replacing of existing fan with energy efficient fan. Okay. So let us continue with this efficiency measure in fan. We measure the initial flow rate and static pressure. So, and we measure the initial efficiency of this fan. So it was just 56%. So we suggested them to go for 80% efficiency plan. So thereby the revised power requirement is 3.43 kilowatt. The annual savings is around 63,500. So this is the saving measure in the case of fan. So other potential for variable speed drives, if there is a change in flow and head requirements, we can drive variable speed drives. In the case of all pumps and fans, instead of damper control, we can use VSD technology. So it is very economical, even at flow requirement is 75 to 80% of the rated capacity. So this is in the case of compressed air. So if you allow compressed air leakage, so there will be a energy loss. So in this table you can see if there is a leakage through 1 mm, so so many liters per minute of air will be leaked, and their corresponding cost losses 21,600 per year. So if you go to any industry, so if the compressor air system not managed properly, definitely you will find 40% leakage. So this leakage, the admissible allowable limit is just 10%. So if you find this leakage, so you try to uh, calculate in terms of the energy, and we can present it as a energy saving measure. So as I said, in electric system, we will not find much scope for improvement if you focus only on this distribution loss, PF improvement, optimal loading of transformer, lighting. But if we need to focus more on driven system, pumps, compressor, fans, blowers, refrigeration and air conditioning system, cooling tower, etc. So next we move on to auditing of thermal utilities. So before that, I would like to take just a quick 1 minute break. I will just would like to appreciate with some of our upcoming webinars. So in our website, you can keep on looking at for webinars, upcoming webinars. So in our website, the left side tab, you will find webinar announcements. If you click directly, you will enter into the list of webinars, upcoming webinars. So 20th April, we have a webinar on second mission of industry growth. So 22nd also we will have a webinar on water and energy conservation in thermal power stations. Please take a note of it. So on the 24th April also we have a webinar on energy efficiency in pumping system with cases. And 22nd we have biomedical waste management rules 2016 and their implementation challenges in India. So on 1st May we have a webinar on best practices for preventive maintenance. We in this for this webinar we charge only a nominal fee of 200 rupees. So from the 4th May we have a webinar on ISO 9001 2015 quality management system. It's 8th May changing energy scenario and its general aspects. So these are the list of webinars. So I request you to kindly make use of this golden opportunity during this lockdown period. So all our webinar sessions are fully loaded, and it's going beyond our capacity. So except one webinar that is charged nominal fee. So all other webinars are free. So take a note of this webinar topics, and please join us in the upcoming webinars.
Sir, we have some questions also, sir.
Continuing, it's going on.
Yeah. See, they are one of the participants now. He has asked for IE4 motors, whether it is a good option in blowers.
We will allot about 15-20 minutes for question answers.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So next we'll go on to thermal auditing. So for thermal auditing, we'll have boilers, steam system, and condensate furnace, heat exchangers, and waste heat recovery systems. So we'll quickly go into some of the slides. So if you see the boiler types, what we use in India, we use subcritical and supercritical boilers. So subcritical boilers, they generate steam at pressures and temperature below critical condition. That is 221.1 bar and 374.19 degrees centigrade. So this is the critical condition of steam. If you operate if you generate steam and operate your boiler below this critical condition, it is coming under subcritical, and beyond that critical condition, your boiler is coming under supercritical. In India, so about 89% we use only subcritical boilers. Only around 11% we use supercritical boilers. So the advantage of using supercritical boiler is it is very efficient. So subcritical boilers, the efficiency is in the range of 28 to 32% only. If you go to supercritical, the efficiency is around 40 to 42%. So this is a list of is above 200 degrees centigrade, so it indicates the potential for waste heat. So if you measure the exit flue gases from the boiler, and if the temperature is more than 200, so you try to recover that waste heat by going for any economizer or air preheater. So as a rule of thumb,
Hello. Yeah, now it's okay.
so in the case of boiler, if the stack temperature is above 200 degree, so it indicates there's a potential for waste heat. So we have to recover the waste heat either by installing economizer or air preheater. So as a rule of thumb, so if you reduce the stack temperature by 20 degrees centigrade, there will be a 1% improvement in saving. So next one is economizer. So we can use the waste heat for preheating of our feed water that is given to the boiler. So here also, if you increase your feed water temperature by 6 degree, there will be a 1% of fuel savings. The next one is combustion air preheat. So this is also we are heating the air which is supplied to the boiler. So if you are able to heat the combustion air by 20 degrees centigrade, definitely there will be a 1% saving in efficiency. The next is incomplete combustion. So incomplete combustion will happen only if there is a supply of more fuel and less air. So there will not be complete combustion. Instead of CO2, your carbon will become carbon monoxide. So if all your carbon in the fuel becomes CO2, we will get around 8,000 kilocalories per kg of carbon. Instead, if you get only carbon monoxide due to incomplete combustion, you will get only 2,000 kilocalories per kg of carbon. So we are losing around 6,000 kilocalories per kg of carbon if you allow incomplete combustion. So next is excess air control. So according to the type of fuel, it requires air, that is mainly oxygen for its combustion. So coal will have some requirement of oxygen, and furnace oil will have different requirement of oxygen, and gas will have different requirement of oxygen. So oxygen we supply it through air. So to complete combustion to take place, we need to supply little bit of extra air. So we should allow 15 to 20% of extra air to complete combustion to take place, and we we should not allow more excess air. If we allow more excess air, then there will be a loss, stack loss. So the air will get simply heated, and the heat will be carried away in the flue gas. So by reducing excess air, by your efficiency will improve by 0.6%. So radiation and convection heat losses. So this will happen from the surfaces of the boiler. It is fixed losses. It will be less than 2%. So by improving the insulation, we can reduce this heat loss. Next one is automatic blowdown. So automatic blowdown also will lead to reduction in the energy savings. So if you allow 10% blowdown of 15 kg steam from a boiler by blowdown, so there will be a decrease of 3% in efficiency. Then scaling and soot, the scale will form in the water side because of solids in the water. If you use untreated water for your boiler, it will form scales in the tubes. It will hinder heat transfer. Then soot also in the fire side, so the carbon deposit, again there will be a problem with heat transfer. The reduction of boiler steam pressure. So if you operate high pressure steam, it requires high fuel consumption. So if you operate low pressure steam, accordingly the fuel consumption also will come down for the same pressure steam generation. Hence, we recommend to operate steam pressure at lower pressures. So your process requirement should match your steam requirement. So it should be based on temperature of the process. If your heating requirement is for 200 degrees centigrade, so the steam should not match with the pressure. It should match with the temperature requirement of process. Accordingly, you can reduce your steam pressure. And by using this low pressure steam, there will be a high latent your pumps is the last one. So boiler loading is another important parameter. So by loading your boiler 75% of rated capacity, you can have better efficiency, and you should accordingly schedule your timings. So boiler replacement should be your final option. So if your boiler has crossed more than 25 years or if life time, and it is very inefficient, it is not suitable for your fuel, cheaper fuel, and it is not suitable for your load requirements. So finally, you can think of replacing a new boiler with IHMS. So thank you very much. So thank you very much for joining me in this webinar. I take this opportunity to thank our Director General for giving me this opportunity, and IT team for coordinating this webinar. So before ending up, I would like to run few slides about our Ambedkar Institute of Productivity, is at Chennai. So it was started in 1963. Originally, it was started as a training center at Chennai. So 1973, it was made as a separate entity, TP, for development of consultants of NPC. In 1991, we got 5-acre land from Tamil Nadu government, and in 1993, so it was renamed as Dr. Ambedkar Institute of Productivity, and we are regularly conducting 2-year PG program since 1998 for our newly recruited assistant directors, consultants. A total of around 1,000 professionals have been trained till now. So this is our AIP Chennai campus. So this is our campus. We have main building, and this is our Bureau of Energy Efficiency Exam Cell. So we conduct prestigious national certification for energy auditors and energy managers since 2003 on behalf of Bureau of Energy Efficiency. So far, more than 10,000 candidates they are qualified and they are practicing energy efficiency in their place. So this CET, we have established this Center of Excellence for Training in Energy Efficiency in 2010 with the help of Ministry of Power Bureau of Energy Efficiency and Ministry of Commerce and Industry and the Government of Japan. We established this world-class training center. Here we give practical training centers for students and industry people. It's also customer tailor-made programs also we undertake here. This is a list of trainings, course coverage we conduct in our training center at Chennai CETE. So this is our setup. We have almost all equipments, demonstration equipments of all industry major energy intensive equipments in our CET campus. So we have hostel facilities and we conducted so many international and national training programs here. So during lockdown period also through live mode we can teach you practical training and theory in webinars also. So I request you to make use of our training courses. Thank you very much. So this is email ID and contact details, Chennai office address. So you can always write to us your queries. You are most welcome to take up assignments in energy and